I offer my warm greetings. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and in Europe. Good evening to our friends in Turkey, the Arab states, and Iran. Good evening to our friends in India, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. Good to see you all. We have some juicy questions, JC.
Yes, Ajahn, we do. Question 1. Dear Ajahn, concerning the 3 levels of samādhi, khanika, upacara, and appana, how much time can one spend in each level of samādhi? Also, is it a case that in the Theravada tradition, when one reaches appana samādhi, one is not aware of the 5 physical senses? How could these 3 levels be described from the perspective of someone who is experiencing them? Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a few questions there. I'm going to keep a copy of it. The questions were interesting tonight. The questions were questions that contain many questions. So I'm going to have a copy here as well and answer them one by one. 3 levels of samādhi. Actually, there are more than 3 levels, but they are broadly described in this manner. Khanika samādhi, which is often translated as momentary concentration. Upacara samādhi, which is usually translated as neighborhood concentration. Neighborhood meaning in the neighborhood of the next level. Appana, which is absorption, one-pointedness, one of the jhana states. But in the jhanas, apparently there are 8 levels. So it's a little bit difficult to describe because, people's experience is different and subjective. A lot of how a practitioner experiences peacefulness will depend on, there are many variables. So partly it's how much practice has a person done in the past lives. I mean, I really do believe this is a factor in how people's minds get peaceful, whether their minds get peaceful. It also depends upon what types of meditation they cultivated in past lives as well. But broadly speaking, khanika samādhi, which is translated as momentary samādhi. So in the very beginning, when people start meditating, you might have that. It's a sense of struggle, and there is literally this moment of cool, lovely coolness, and then this kind of struggling with the hindrances again. And you might have that just literally a couple of seconds. That's quite common if a person hasn't trained their mind in meditation much. Quite common for momentary samadhi to be literally just a few moments. My very first experience of what I believe was khanika samadhi was during a 10-day retreat on day 8, and it was, I don't even know how many seconds, but it wasn't a minute. It was only a few seconds, but it was deeply cool and peaceful, and got my attention and helped me commit to daily meditation practice ever since. But having said that, momentary concentration can also be 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. So as a person's mind becomes more accustomed to gathering or centering for periods of time, the khanika samadhi can be a few minutes. If a person's sitting for 20 minutes, half an hour, it's possible to experience that a couple of times. You have a few minutes of peace in between the thoughts, no particular sense of struggling with hindrances, and then the thoughts come back. Unruly feelings come back in the heart area. And then come back to the breath, you get a few more minutes. That's quite common for people who are skilled meditators when they get busy. So of course, the type of peacefulness you experience also changes depending on what's happening in your life. So even if you're a skilled meditator, if you get busy, you may just get a few minutes of peacefulness in your normal session here and there. So the upacara samadhi, the level of peacefulness, this is when it's like a 15 or 20 minute period, is how it's genuinely understood. And the thing that helps us to know whether it is upacara samadhi or not is that there are still a few thoughts, but they tend to be within the wholesome spectrum. So it's like the mind is in a wholesome, upacara samadhi is peaceful. And this is important to understand. Upacara samadhi is peaceful. Because of that, a lot of people assume that their experience of upacara samadhi is the jhanic experience. And this can be a bit of a danger to practice, because if we think we've, jhana samadhi, appana samadhi, the next level, is generally considered to be something of an accomplishment or an attainment. And so if we think we've got it and we haven't, there is a danger of, with overestimation, there is a danger of some conceit or some arrogance and developing more of a sense of self, which is not what we want to do. And so, but I do understand that people need something of a roadmap to know what they're aiming for and to have some idea of what they're experiencing. Where it gets tricky is because, according to Ajahn, the upacara experience has coarse, intermediate, and refined. And this is where I think people sometimes think they might have the first jhana, and then, no, that was more peaceful, that must have been the second jhana, that was even more peaceful, that might have been the third jhana. Another thing to understand is it really is peaceful. And oftentimes it's not yet jhana. So this is where, so the next level, appana samadhi, most people in this day and age, if they do experience jhana samadhi, will experience the first jhana. And the next question was, one of the questions was, in Theravada Buddhism, when a person is in appana samadhi, are they not aware of the 5 sense bases? So it has nothing to do with Theravada, Mahayana, or Vajrayana. It has to do with your body and your mind and how you experience it when it's peaceful. So some people in the first jhana hear sounds and others don't. This is where it's a bit subjective. This depends upon what you've cultivated, how you've cultivated, how your mind experiences peacefulness. So it gets a bit tricky. Yet again, there's no kind of absolute tick, tick, tick. This is the experience. The way I can describe it in terms of how I experience it is, or how I have experienced it, is if there's upacara samadhi, peacefulness touching on or getting close to in the neighborhood of absorption, there's still a subtle sense of self. There's a sense of, oh, my mind is nice and peaceful. If it's the absorption, the peacefulness really becomes the object. It's like it is just peace and quite unshakable. And when I've experienced it, I've still been aware of sound. There was an occasion once I was meditating under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, and somebody who I knew and knew me had just arrived, and they said, "Tana Janka, Tana Janka." They were very excited. I was meditating, and it was like being down in a deep well, hearing this voice as though it was about a mile away. And then there was this sense, a few seconds later, there was this awareness, oh, that was such and such a person. And then there's like maybe another 10 or 20 seconds, and then it's like, oh, maybe I should. And I couldn't, the mind couldn't even finish the sentences. The peacefulness was suppressing thought activity to such an extent that I was aware that should I decide to talk to that person, it would have taken 5 to 10 minutes for the mind to be in a state where it could articulate, have a thought process, and pick up a sense of being a self again and have a conversation. So, but there was the awareness of the sound. And other times there's been some kind of peripheral awareness when my mind is in a peaceful state like that. There's an awareness that somebody could hit you on the head and that you wouldn't be upset. It's the pieces is so kind of immovable, and there's no palpable sense of self there, that there's just this awareness that a branch could fall on my head or somebody could hit me and it wouldn't affect the mind. it's that kind of stable peacefulness. And that's probably, I believe, the first jhana. So there are 7, and they get more and more profound. Getting up to the infinite base of space, infinite base of consciousness, infinite base of emptiness, infinite base of neither perception or non-perception. So that's like getting extremely profound. It's like, but there's not going to be a sense of someone who's experiencing that. So if there's this sense of, oh, this is the first jhana, oh, I love the first jhana is so good. No, I don't think so. That's that won't be happening. That kind of commenting and congratulating and being excited, that won't be happening if it's real samadhi. If it's real samadhi, absorption, appana, peacefulness is the object. It is sometimes described as one-pointed. I don't like that description because that's not how it's experienced for myself. I like the word right collectedness for samma samadhi. The mind is collected. And when they say one-pointed, it means it's not picking up any other objects. It means that peacefulness is the object, but peacefulness can be experienced as quite vast, which is why I don't like concentration or one-pointedness. A deeply peaceful mind can feel extremely spacious, normally would, in fact. So that's why I don't. The reason they say one-pointed is because it's not picking up any other objects. It is just with that peacefulness that the meditation object led the mind towards. Another thing I'd like to say about practicing samadhi, though, is the best way to cultivate samadhi is to put forth a lot of effort and be content with the level of peacefulness that you are experiencing. This is extremely important. If we bring a lot of desire and ambition to the meditation practice, it will obstruct peaceful mind states. So sometimes, I mean, I've done this, I've experienced this myself when I make my vows, 1,000 hours, another 1,000 hours, another 1,000 hours. That one does bring a sense of self to it, but sometimes when you're making a genuinely energetic, almost heroic effort, the sheer effort itself can grind down that. So it's like, just if you really do have to get up when you get up and you really do have to go to the body tree and you really are sitting and then you have to rush back and you're sitting again. And the momentum and the effort and the commitment to the schedule can grind down that sense of it's only wonderful for so many days before it becomes really hard work. It's like, and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of hindrances and at a certain point the effort takes over and you just commit to it. And the way I often encourage people is you need ambition, you need some desire mind to get you to your meditation pillow. And then you have to remind yourself as soon as you're on it that you drop that now. What you need once you're on your pillow is to be with the breath in the present moment. And everything else has to be put aside. So it's a bit of a trick. You do need to have aspiration, chanda in Pali, some ambition, some hope, but we try to drop the desire, the agenda, the determination. You just have to be determined to really be with its in-breath or really be with its out-breath. You have to be determined to really have loving kindness sincerely, or you have to be determined to be with your theme of contemplation without getting outside of the parameters of your theme of contemplation, if you're doing body contemplation or death meditation or elements meditation, for example. So whatever peacefulness we have, and Ajahn Anan, my teacher, describes them all as samādhi, which I like. It's very helpful. If you sat for half an hour, you've been having a busy day, you sat for half an hour, you literally had a couple of moments of khanika samādhi, you did experience some samādhi. Great. If you haven't been quite so busy and you've done a couple of sessions and you experience 15 to 20 minutes of peacefulness in your hour of sitting, you experience some upacara samadhi, you experience samadhi. And it's all good. if you become familiar with experiencing 15 to 20 minutes of meditation, for myself, it's very common for me that it takes 20 minutes for the mind to truly become peaceful. Then it'll be peaceful for 20 minutes. And then there's a little bit of wandering for 20, and another, after 20 minutes, then I'll have another 20 minutes of peacefulness. And I can keep doing that. If I do it for days and weeks, sometimes the 20 minutes of peacefulness might become 40 minutes of peacefulness, and I can sit for another hour. So it is good to understand that you don't necessarily have to get up after you've had your peaceful experience of, oh, I've done my meditation. You can sit a bit longer and try to incline the mind towards experiencing peacefulness again in the same session, making the session longer, because it's the familiarization. Suppose you become adept and familiar with having 15 to 20 minutes of peacefulness in an hour, and maybe you can have that twice in an hour. If you become very, very familiar with that, that is what is going to lead to the appana samadhi. It's the familiarization with being almost in the neighborhood of being in absorption. It is the familiarization with that which is going to lead to it. And some people who practice a lot in past lives may have a faster process. They may in Thailand, we have these incredible practitioners that got amazing results quite quickly. It's not uncommon in a Buddhist country for people with accumulated virtue to come and be born in a place where there are many arahants. So you can read the biographies of some of the great masters, and then they seem to get great results very quickly. It's very inspiring. Can be a bit frustrating for people with a different level, more ordinary level of accumulated virtue, that our life story doesn't read like Luang Por Man's or Luang Por Cha's or Meiji Gao's. But it will. If you keep practicing in one of your future lives, it will read just like that. So we work with what we have, and we try to do more and more. Obviously, if you can increase your session from once a day to twice a day to 3 times a day, you are going to be increasing the length and duration of the peacefulness and the depth of the peacefulness as well. Consistency is very important and very helpful. You can do it over a long period, weeks, months, years, decades. It will get better and better. So I wish you every success, cultivating peacefulness as a foundation for insight.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question to the Ajahn. If it's all empty, there's nothing, and there's no self, what is being reborn? Thank you.
Why do beginning Buddhists do this to the Buddha's teaching? When a young man was talking to Luang Por Chah in his monastery, Luang Por Chah used to have a walking stick. And the young man said, if everything's empty, why should I bother doing any practice? And Ajahn Chah picked up his walking stick and hit him on the head. And the boy said, ouch! And then Luang Por Chah said, because even though it's empty, when I do this, it hurts, right? So let's have Buddhism 101. Let's consider what the Buddha taught and what the Buddha did not teach. So the Buddha never said there is nothing. Buddha never said, the Buddha never said there is, he didn't even say there is no self. It's very important to understand. He said it is not self. And so the question, what is being reborn? So if everything is empty, so emptiness is a profound subject, sunyata. Emptiness of what? Emptiness of permanence. There's no abiding permanent thing in the body and mind experience. Emptiness of unceasing happiness. That's why there is unsatisfactoriness, is a characteristic of experience. So there is no unceasing, non-degenerating happy state. So there is emptiness of permanent happiness. anatta, empty of self, dukkha, and empty of permanence. There is a body and a mind. When you come to this practice, somebody is teaching you, trying to teach you Dhamma, you're listening to a Dhamma talk, you're reading a book, there's a body there, there's a mind there are eyes there are ears there. So you have a body, conventionally speaking, and then you have the 5 sense bases plus the mind sense base. Otherwise, you couldn't listen to Dhamma or read the Dhamma book or bring your body to meditate. So we start with that. There is rupa. You have a body. There is the 5 sense bases and the 6 base of mind. What Lord Buddha's teaching is saying is that the way we perceive it is not ultimate truth. So one analogy is, if you have a glass of water, because of delusion, it is stained. It isn't clear. It has ink in it, or it has dye in it. So that is delusion, darkens the mind, clouds the mind. Because the mind is deluded and clouded, particularly with this Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view, it perceives things in terms of a self. And this is the reason why we ask this question. Well, if there's not self and there's nothing, then there's nothing. It's literally that we can't even imagine something that isn't a self because we're so habituated to perceiving everything in terms of self and other. Even in other religions, when they think of God, it's like this big self in the sky. And you call him, he, the Heavenly Father, the King in heaven, Atman. You want to realize ultimate self. And so what Lord Buddha, after he realized not self, anatta, not no self, after he realized not self, he was reluctant to teach, it says, because he knew it would be difficult. And that was his phrase. He says, this world, beings relish self. And it will be frustrating for me to try to teach them. This world is mired in self. And so the best way to understand not self, in my opinion, is meditation. Because just as we were talking, the types of peacefulness, when the mind is peaceful for 15 and 20 minutes, if a person is experiencing upacara samādhi, and there might be 5 minutes with not a single thought, this is what helps us understand that it's possible for there to be something that is experienced that isn't constantly making self and other in a world in the past and the future. I always say this on a meditation, guided meditation, before we do the Q&A. Just rest with the breath, rest in the moment, not sending the mind into the past and the future, thoughts about other people. What happens? Spacious experience opens up in the mind. You can experience 3, 4, 5 minutes with no thoughts, not conceiving of a self, not conceiving of others. And what is it? There's a peaceful mind, which isn't interpreting everything as being a self. As soon as the meditation is over, you might get up and go, oh, that was a great meditation. I just had a great meditation. I'm going to go and tell all of my friends on Telegram or WhatsApp what a great meditation I had. I'm a great meditator. But when the mind was peaceful, it wasn't doing that. So, and then the more you meditate, as I was saying before, as the meditation, as the peacefulness gets deeper and more profound, longer periods of time, sense of self gets more and more subtle and then disappears for a period of time, particularly in the experience of vipassana jnana, when a person experiences insight knowledges. And most people are more likely to experience that in a 10-day intensive retreat where you're doing 10 or 12 hours of meditation a day, because that's the kind of effort that is needed for most people cultivating right mindfulness to pierce through the habit of delusion and ignorance, perceiving of things as a self. The sheer effort takes over and the mindfulness gets strong enough. And also we're refraining and restraining the mind from doing things like, I'm not going to my job, I'm not talking to my husband, I'm not dealing with my kids, I'm not thinking about my future. I'm coming back to the breath, coming back to the feelings, coming back to the footsteps, coming and say, when we don't feed the self-view, and we do feed the mindfulness of the meditation object, there will be chinks in the armor. The self-view will fall away from conscious experience for periods. And the clarity that you have from the consistency and the effort in your meditation will have an experience of a body and mind without the self-view being present. And that's the best way to understand. It is not self. Conventionally speaking, you can be sitting there meditating. The body's there, the mind is there, peacefulness is there, no conception of self is there, no awareness of others, no conceiving of self and others is there. And having this kind of experience is very important, because that's what helps us understand afterwards. Oh, it's true. This is a habitual view that I have, but it's not actually the ultimate truth. There's another thing that you'll notice, is that when the self-view falls away from the mind for a period of time, there's no suffering at all during that time, because there's no one there to suffer. So there's a few things functioning in that. There's good quality of mindfulness, there's a good quality of samadhi, and there's some wisdom. The path factors are, the Dharma wheel is rolling in the heart, in the mind, uprooting ignorance and delusion for a period of time. Sense of self falls away, no suffering at all. But a truly profound sense of peace. So that's not nothing. When you're experiencing the most peace, the most tranquility, the most contentment that you ever experienced, you're not going to come away from that experience and say, oh, there's nothing. You might come away from that experience and say, it's true. Awareness that is aware of emptiness. Awareness that is aware of emptiness is the most profoundly peaceful thing that we can experience. So I hope that helped to this person understand that there's not nothing, and there's a conventional self that we have to work with. We have to steward the healthy functioning of the self, conventionally speaking, so that we can have insights into not self. Next part of it is what gets reborn. So there is a mind. In Thai language, they call it the chitta. In Pali, it's the chitta. So mind gets reborn. And the suttas say that consciousness is reborn and karma is the fuel. So your mind, and that's if you get these experiences of, you get the experience of 5 or 10 minutes of peacefulness with not much of a sense of self. Okay. So that's what's going to go to the next birth, and it's going to have a different kind of a self depending on how it's socialized. So depending on the karma that push it around, depending on the environment. But once you get a sense for that palpable sense of presence of mind, calm, clarity, peace, no conceiving of self and others, that is going to be reborn. Consciousness. And depending on the type of karma you've made, how much clarity you have when you die, your mind will go. Two things are most important. The average level that your mind has been on throughout your life. So if you've been mostly a human being, you'll go to a human-like experience. If you've been a saint-like, beautiful Kalyana Chon most of your life, you might be going to heaven. If you've been a human one day, an angry dog the next day, a demon the next day, quickly do a retreat, get back to the human realm, moments of being a deva, then it's not sure. Lord Buddha says it's like throwing a stick up in the sky. You don't know which end of the stick is going to land, the wholesome karmas or the negative karmas. We have to hope that when we die, we're having some good karma ripen and we're having a peaceful death. But we do try to maintain a good average mind state, try to be human, mostly human most of the time, and devas some of the time. If you experience frequently samadhi, the khanika samadhi, the upacara samadhi, then the higher heaven realms become possible, Yama Deva, Tusita Deva. If you've been extremely generous, but you're very sensual, you might be born in Dawatimsa in a heavenly mansion with 100 wives. This is not recommended. You might get more attached to pleasure than you were before. I don't know if you can be born with 100 husbands. I can't remember. You have to ask. You have to ask a great master. But most of you who've had one would probably concur that one is enough. One at a time. So if you start to experience the khanika samadhi, upacara samadhi for longer periods of time, Tushita heaven becomes a possibility for you. Tushita heaven is known as the heaven of the contented. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to be contented for a lifetime? On the way to no more rebirth as a lily pad, a stepping stone. If you get adept at the jhanic states, this can be a bit dangerous. You may go to the Brahma realms, and Ajahn said the Brahma Devas are the most difficult to teach because their samadhi really is very peaceful and the suffering is very coarse, very subtle. So it's difficult to contemplate. If you get really, really amazing samadhi, difficult to contemplate unsatisfactoriness. Imagine you could go into metta jhana on one in-breath whenever you wanted to. Anapanasati, you become so adept with it, picking up the breath as a meditation object, you can do it on one in-breath. So whenever there's any kind of unpleasant impingement, okay, just breathe in. You know, there was a monk training with Luang Por Chah that he was just sweeping leaves and he just stood there and he was standing there for hours. He was in jhana samadhi. It was so adept and so easy for him to become peaceful. Sweeping leaves, he could enter absorption. I think Ajahn Chah made him his attendant to force him to have to be mindful of things outside of himself and not just inclining the mind towards peacefulness so easily. So such beings exist. I mean, that bhikkhu may have just come down from a Brahma realm. So that's why he's so attenuated to, accustomed to the samadhi state. It's so easy to absorb into it. So the more we do, it does get easier. So yes, may you be truly human. May you forgive yourself for the days that you are not and pull up your socks quickly. Get back to the human realm. And when you're meditating, you'll be having moments when you're a deva and produces merit, increases your chances of a good rebirth. And a practice that is skillful is after your meditation to make the aspiration, may I die with a peaceful mind. And may the merits that I've cultivated this life support me at that time to find the most auspicious rebirth where I can continue to practice Buddha Dhamma. It's a good thing to keep dropping in consciousness that you hope to die peacefully and you hope to continue practicing. Because something does get reborn until we undo the causes.
Thank you, Prajan.
And then something realizes unshakable peace. Something experiences nibbana also. It's not nothing. It's not one great big grand ultimate suicide. It's much better than that. You killing ignorance and delusion. The mind, the liberated mind, then experiences unshakable, unceasing peace.
Question 3, dear Ajahn. May I know how can we tell the correct or suitable limit for the social media one should consume? Knowing that one will get affected easily from social media, especially with the recent news of the war. I haven't been looking at social media for the past week. This has been very helpful, but returning to the social life, we have to be in touch with some news. Thank you.
So it is important to be discerning. With regard to news, I wouldn't recommend watching mainstream news at all, really, because there's a lot in there which isn't very truthful, and there's a lot in there which is propaganda. Some of it might even come into the category of um, mind control. So what I would recommend, which is going to sound slightly strange because I'm on one breath, I'm telling you to be very careful limiting your social media. But so if you have a Twitter account, which is now X, for example, you can follow people who you trust. So this is one way to get your news, is there may be some journalists who you trust. So you follow just the ones that you trust. And then you can go into the settings and you can say that you do not want to see violent or sexually explicit material. So you can, it's not the social media platform that's censoring or the news that who are presenting things to in a certain way, some oftentimes to rile up the emotions. You can say that you can follow journalists who you trust, who you think have integrity and generally speak truthfully, and you can screen out violent images and violent aggressive speech. So I would recommend that you use a social media where you can be involved in curating your own experience. So you don't expose yourself to whatever the producers of CNN or Fox want to expose you to. You 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 know, and it takes some work. You need to be discerning, you need to be mature, you need to be disciplined. So that might mean you might need to, YouTube is a place where you can find where some journalists are reporting and then get a sense for which ones you trust. And then you follow them on Twitter. And so for myself, I do check in. I have a Twitter account, fake name, of course. And I don't want you reading my comments on YouTube. No, on Twitter. So no, it's best not to comment, of course. But you can the thing about looking at Twitter for 5 or 10 minutes is you will get a good sense of what people are considering to be news today. Just from that much. You will see if something really big happened in the world. People come. So there's two sections on your X account. There's something that says for you, where the algorithm will suggest to you what they think you might be interested in. And there's the other section, which is following, the ones that you've chosen that you're following. So normally I would only go on to following, and I would see the journalists who I trust, who I've listened to, and see if what they're saying makes sense, see if it's balanced, see if it's well researched, see if it's truthful, fair, and I'll see what they think news is today. And other than that, I would avoid. I would never turn on the television and watch the evening news if I was a layperson. And they're just kind of riling you up. I think oftentimes the news serves to distract you from other important things that you should be paying attention to. It's and it's sponsored by corporations who are trying to sell you things. And so just be truthful about that. It's okay. This is not fair, unbiased, and balanced media. It is not. And they've done surveys. I think the level of trust in mainstream media now is in America is 12%. People give it a 12% trust rating, but many people still watch it religiously. If you had a friend that you trusted 12%, would you continue to see that person as your good friend? I wouldn't. I mean, my friends, I need to trust them 80 or 90%, to keep seeing them. If it gets down to 12%, I'm not talking to that person anymore if I don't have to. And I'm not listening to them. If I have to, I'll be patient. But so, I think in this day and age, you can curate your own news experience. And I think it's important. I actually think it's important that people do, because then you're not cooperating with some of the more nefarious forces out there. You're not just sitting on your couch, being a couch potato, listening to what they're telling you should believe and who you should love and who you should hate and what substances you should inject into your body and various other things that you will be hearing. My preferred source of news is to listen to long format interviews of genuine professionals in their field. I might do that a couple of times a week. If I really want to know something, I'll find out the real expert in the field and I'll listen for an hour. And then if someone tells me, you listen to fake news, you're an alt-right, you're a conspiracy theorist, I'm like, well, I did listen to a microbiologist, a virologist, a epidemiologist, and someone who'd run vaccine programs in the past myself. So I did invest 100 hours into my perspective. What did you do? Oftentimes the people who are calling you a conspiracy theorist are the ones who have succumbed to the conspiracy theories. But I digress. You choose who you trust using your discriminating intelligence. Like if you're listening to a person who's really talking, like you're listening to me now, many of you have been listening to me for a few years, at a certain point you developed a sense, I trust this guy. I'm willing to check in and listen to this guy. He might go on for a whole hour, but he goes on. But some of the things he says make sense. This person seems to have some integrity, some knowledge, some wisdom, some experience. So similarly with your news, you seek out people that seem to know what they're talking about in a balanced way, who are fair, even-tempered, and can give you the information. And they are out there, but it takes some discipline and some maturity and some discernment. But these are all qualities that we want to cultivate. And it would be good if we are better informed. And the practice of Dhamma is about realizing truth, studying truth, liberating the mind from ignorance and delusion by realizing truth. So having an interest in truth is a good thing. And of course, keeping it to a sensible amount. For myself as a monk, I have spare time, but I also have a commitment to my formal practices. So I can do my meditation before my arms round. I can do my mantras on my arms round. I can do my meditation after my arms round. I can receive my guests after the meal. And I can study psychology and listen to professionals. I can spend an hour listening to media with discernment if I want to. And I have many fields that I study part-time because I prefer, in a time when there is so much lying, I prefer myself, it's part of my character, is I love and respect truth and I want to know what the truth is. So I do my own research about various things. And I find that a nice kind of way of defending against lies. So, but a lot of people are more busy than me. So, just check in with the one person who you trust. And then if something really serious happens, you'll hear it, and everyone else will be talking about it. You'll hear it. I think you could probably go with completely not looking at any news. You're still going to hear about every big disaster in the world because everyone else around you is talking about it, unless you live in a very remote place. And if we listen with discrimination and we listen at just the right amount, suppose you don't get completely overwhelmed with kind of images of people being shot or assaulted or babies being burned or whatever it is. When you hear the news and you go to your meditation, at the end of your meditation, you dedicate merit. May the people in Gaza, such and such and such and such. May the people in Israel, such and such and such and such. You can actually respond to the information you've heard with a good heart, a kind heart, produce some merit, dedicate and direct that merit in a very particular way. But if you become overwhelmed with negativity and feel that it's all just too much, you're not going to have any merit or any good-heartedness to share, to dedicate. So there's benefits to getting just the right amount of news. And then prayers well-directed. If enough people do that, if a lot of people listen to less news and prayed more sincerely for the peace and well-being on the world would definitely become a better place. So let's all strive for the right amount and balance in this area.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 4, dear Ajahn. You once shared that as a novice struggling with meditation, you left the meditation hall and encountered your teacher waiting for you on the path, who advised you do not try so hard during meditation. How can one find the right balance between too much and too little effort in meditation? Are there questions one can ask oneself to help steer oneself to the middle intensity? What signs in our practice indicate that we should actually lift our game and push ourselves to try harder? Conversely, if meditation feels miserable or boring, is that a sign that we are meditating at too high an intensity or without gentleness, self-compassion? Thank you.
See, I told you, the questions this evening contain many questions. Questions within questions. So, how do you know if you're doing enough meditation? What are the signs that your meditation is going in the right direction? What are the signs that you might not be doing enough? So, generally speaking, if you're doing enough meditation, and many people will have experience by this stage of having done more for periods of time and having done less for periods of time. And so we have that as a frame of reference. When you're doing enough meditation, the way you experience, the way you perceive and the way you experience your mind states change. So there's more of a sense of spacious awareness around your thoughts and your feelings, spacious awareness around sense impingement. And so you do your meditation, morning meditation. Before you went to bed, you did your evening meditation. You come to work or you see your relatives, you see your friends, somebody says something annoying. There's this awareness of the words. There's this awareness that you don't like it, but there's a choice about whether you react or not. It's just kind of, there's more spaciousness there. There's some gaps between sense contact, old perceptions, and thoughts. If the thoughts do come, why does he always say that? There's more awareness around the thoughts. And then and that also gives us choices. Like, am I going to say something? If I was going to say something, is now the right time? If it's not the right time, when would be the right time? What is the best way to say this thing if I do have to say something? So that's when your practice is going well and you're doing enough meditation and you've got good mindfulness. So that we can all see that. What's the level of reactivity? How quickly do we fly into craving for or craving not for? See someone attractive and your mind instantly wants to jump on them and start kissing them. Okay, not good mindfulness. Lots of lust. You see, you've been doing your meditation diligently. You see something attractive. You're aware that there's attractiveness. You're aware that there's desire, but you're not going to jump on them. I hope, not my students. So if you haven't been meditating enough, you see them, you're already annoyed. They say that thing, you're already at them. Okay, that's not enough meditation. And of course, different people trigger us differently. Sometimes, even if you are meditating well, if a person triggers you, sometimes you can still get triggered. There's a lot of energy there, a lot of contentiousness. But generally speaking, there is a sense of spacious awareness. I sometimes use the word porousness. There's a porousness to the mind. So there's not a solid sense of self which is ready to react with liking and not liking. There's awareness around the sense of self, and there's some wriggle room, some capacity to the way we hold the sense of self, the way we use it or navigate the world with it. And that comes with practice, more of a sense of space, more of a sense of options and choices. The mind kind of slows down so that you can make decisions about how you do things rather than blindly reacting. So I hope you all do lots of meditation, that it helps you experience very spacious minds, lots of choice about how you react or whether you react. When mindfulness is really, really good, really, really good, the words come, And there isn't even a feeling of liking and disliking, because there's some samādhi, some equanimity, very good mindfulness. There's just awareness of hearing. And the mindfulness and the concentration is held in the heart, and it doesn't get in. When mind mindfulness is very good, I can be aware of a little bit of energy bubbling up from the heart area that's about to become a thought, and I can kind of feel or smell or tell that it's not a wholesome thought, and I can say stop before it becomes a thought. It's just this awareness. Oh, that's going to be a critical, aversive thought. No, stop. Don't do that. Well, that's going to be a great stop. And it's good to know that I'm not making any claims. I don't have that experience all the time, but I do sometimes have that experience, that I'm able to bring a thought formation to stillness before it became a thought. And, the great practitioners, when they have mahasati, that's what it's about. It's ordinary sati becomes good sati becomes very good sati becomes mahasati. They're able to be aware of senses impinging on sense bases. They're able to have thoughts about it or not. And generally, yes, if you become less patient, more irritable, more reactive, you're not meditating enough. You meditate more, you become more spacious, more calm, less reactive. You're doing some good meditation, sadhu. That could include listening to Dharma talks and chanting, whatever practices stimulate a good quality of presence of mind and clarity in your mind. Sadhu.
Dear Ajahn, is it okay to experiment and come up with our own meditation techniques? For example, if I'm doing breath meditation and I experience a pang of emotion in my body, then can I project my mind deeper into this bodily sensation to explore it and stop focusing on the breath? Or is that a bad thing to do? Because during breath meditation, our focus is to drop anything that diverts our attention away from the breath, whether
Yes.
it's emotion, thoughts, or physical sensations. Can you please suggest any criteria or question we can ask ourselves to help us assess when we might be going down the wrong path when one experiments with modifying meditation techniques?
So we are trying to practice breath meditation, and so we want the awareness of the breath. But it is inevitable that when a knee pain gets more and more kind of impinging, or a shoulder pain gets more and more impinging, that it pulls the attention to it. So what I do in my own practice is I'm still broadly aware of the in-breath and broadly aware of the out-breath, and I place awareness. I do place awareness on that feeling, because that's what helps not to become averse to it, in my experience. So it's like when a pain in the body is quite palpable, impinging quite a lot, one is still broadly aware of, one knows when one's breathing in, one knows when one's breathing out, and one's awareness is there, kind of patiently bearing with. And it's also, but we don't give up. We don't give up the awareness of the breath. So it's like you just make your field of awareness a little larger, and the breath is still in the center of the experience, but you include this other thing as well. Awareness is a spacious thing, so it can be aware of several things. So we want the breath, that basic awareness of the in and out breath, as the center, the anchor, and then where one is also aware of other things occurring in the body and mind, and we patiently bear with these feelings. Sometimes I use metta. If there's a lot of pain, breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy. Breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy, because that just helps me to bear with a lot of pain in the body or mind. Sometimes it's a painful emotion, trying to be aware of the in and out breath. And there is pain in the heart area. So breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy. So you're aware of the breath and you're aware of this pain in the same area. And it's okay. You can be you allow your awareness to be aware of these things. But I don't recommend giving up the awareness of the in and out breathing. That's what helps keep the mind from being swayed into aversion or losing the track of the meditation and becoming lost in discursive thoughts about other things. So one can use the breath and be aware. Then another thing one can do in that practice is you're basically aware of the in-breath, you're basically aware of the out-breath, but there's another emotion there. You can also choose to be aware of noticing how it changes. This is actually a very important part of practice because there's often the mind can react if there's a solid feeling of shoulder pain, knee pain, back pain. The mind can get, I just don't want to practice, there's too much pain. And it gets to a point where it doesn't want to work with it anymore. But if you can have some more spacious awareness that is aware of those feelings and see the way the feelings are moving, the mind can actually get interested in that. Oh, interesting. Isn't that interesting? It's not a solid, unchanging thing. But it's very important that we still keep the basic awareness of the in-breath and the basic awareness of the out-breath, because that's what gives the mind the steadiness to be able to observe in that way. And that practice can actually develop quite profound insight when you really see arising, ceasing, cessation, cessation, cessation within feelings. But you do need to keep, in my experience, you do need to keep the general awareness of the in and out breath so that the mindfulness has the integrity to be able to see the way feelings change and cease. So yeah, I don't think that's experimenting with the meditation method so much as working with phenomena as they arise in the body and mind, with the breath meditation being the main object. But we're cultivating the four foundations of mindfulness, and Lord Buddha says in the Anapanasati Sutta that by cultivating the breath meditation, one can fully cultivate the four foundations of mindfulness. This is why, just was what I was experiencing. You're aware of the breath, but you're also aware of an emotion. You're aware of the breath, you're aware of a thought. You're aware of the breath, you're aware of pain in the body. And yes, we're mindful of it. So I hope something I said may have been helpful to you. I wish you all the best in your practice of Buddha Dhamma. I think I'll see you in a fortnight, and then after that I'll be off to India, I think. Might have a bit of a break from the live streams. But let's meet again in a fortnight, life permitting. Answer the unanswered questions. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year, Ajahn.
Yeah, likewise.
Happy New Year.
Happy
New
Happy
Year.
New Year,
New
Ajahn.
Year.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.